Glarb Calamitous Augur. So big welcome to a Sultai Extra Turns deck tech video. But let's begin by explaining Glarb. So he is similar to a future sight in the command zone. You may look at the top card of your library and then play lands from the top of your library. But also, and cast spells with mana value 4 or greater from the top of your library. Yeah, that's bad. But then Glarb also has an activated ability of just tap to surveil too. So you can top deck a little bit to efficiently dig through your library somewhat kinda. But the big problem, or well, let's just say this, the dream here with his commander is to basically make a combo out of him where he lands, you win the match instantly, kinda, by simply just casting your entire library. The problem is, you can't cast Mana Crypt or Soldering or Lotus Petal from the top of your library with this commander. So everything just falls to pieces. The only thing this commander basically needs is a Paradox Engine. Tap and Surveil 2 to have a 4 CMC card on top of your library, cast that thing to untap all of your mana dorks and rocks and your commander and rinse and repeat until you've basically cast your entire library. But Paradox Engine is banned. But there are a lot of cards we should take a look at that are actually on CMC4 that are kinda good inside this format, that are free to cast. For example, Force of Vigor. So instead of paying its mana cost, you can exile 1 green mana dork from your hand to destroy 2 or 1 artifact and or enchantments. Submerge? If an opponent controls a forest and you control an island, you are going to control an island, you may play Submerge without paying its mana cost, and it has a CMC 5, so it's basically free to cast. Snuff Out? If you control a swamp, you can pay 4 life instead of paying its mana cost to destroy target non-black creature and it can't be regenerated. Then we have weird things like Spinning Darkness. You may remove the top 3 black cards in your graveyard from the game instead of paying Spinning Darkness casting cost. It deals 3 damage to target non-black creature and you gain 3 life. But then we also have a Treasure Cruise. Or we could just say Delve cards here in general, I think. So these Delve cards come with a really high mana cost. But you can basically just exile cards from your graveyard to not pay that really expensive mana cost, or well, reduce the casting cost drastically. This should also help you a lot with just digging through your entire deck list by casting card by card. We also have the 5 mana Gush. You may return 2 islands you control to owner's hand instead of paying Gush mana cost. Draw 2 cards. Paradoxical Outcome, 4 CMC. Return any number of target non-land, non-token permanents you control to their owner's hand, draw a card for each card, return to your hand this way. Now this one you actually have to pay the 4 mana for. But with a lot of ritual artifacts like Mana Crypt, Soldering, Chromox, Mox Diamond, etc., you're going to just return those artifacts back to your hand, or well, you can even return some of your tapped mana dorks as well, but then you can recast those ritual artifacts to basically turn a Paradox Outcome into a card draw and a big ritual. But we have more weird things here, like Thoughtcast Affinity for Artifacts. If you have 4 artifacts in play, you're going to reduce the casting cost down to only 1 blue mana. Perfect! Occam Adversary. This spell costs 2 less to cast if an opponent controls a green permanent, which isn't always guaranteed, so maybe this is something you maybe should ignore, but if you're in a metagame where there's a lot of mana dorks, then this could be good. It's also kind of an okay value engine that can attack and draw cards. It's not great, but it's also not terrible. So you're getting a picture of a lot of 4 CMC or higher CMC cards that we can basically just cast for free without paying mana for them. There are lots of variants out there, a lot of casual variants too, like big stompy creatures that does nothing but come into play on a free to cast cost basically. Don't play those. There's also counter spells like Mindbreak Trap, Force of Will, etc. Those also have a 4 CMC or higher, but don't play those either because you can't really cast them unless there are spells on the stack. You could counterspell your own spells, like you could cast Submerge and then cast Force of Will from the top of your library, but it's getting weird at this point, and you're already kind of including a lot of interaction in this pathway with the submerge and snuff out, etc. But we need to improve this concept further, and that is by having extra land drops. Once again, you may play lands from the top of your library with this commander, so you absolutely want to play exploration. That is going to help your consistency in the storm run, because you're going to get rid of lands from the top of your library, but also you're going to increase your mana during the storm run by playing more lands. And you want to get your hands on all fetch lands you can get your hands on. I would even recommend Prismatic Vista and Fable Passage as well, because every time you shuffle, you change what's on top of your library, as well as decreasing lands in your deck that would make you brick. But now we need to kind of win somewhere in all of this. And that's where we get to the extra turns part. So you might have heard of Beacon of Tomorrow and Nexus of Fate. If these are the only cards you have remaining in your library, you will go infinite turns. And everything that is decreasing your deck size is basically going to increase the chance of you reaching to this point. Now these spells are super expensive, and extra turns are in general quite expensive. But the moment you're starting to cast some of them, it will just improve. Here's the thing, if you have an extra turn spell on top of your library with a CMC 5, you cast it with your amazing commander. You will now go to your next turn, where you get to untap your commander so you can surveil 2 again, and untap all of your mana dorks and draw a card. With this commander, you get to look at a lot of cards with the surveil ability, helping you dig through the deck quite efficiently. You can easily make sure that you're usually always hitting an extra turn at every single iteration of this. So the game plan of this commander: get some extra land drop effects into play, start accumulating a lot of mana with artifacts and mana dorks, get your commander into play, start looking at the top of your library, and start decreasing your deck size as much as you can. Cast all of your free to cast spells whenever they come up, and try to cast a extra turn spell whenever that comes up. I will highly recommend Boseiju Who Shelters All here, that is going to give you protection versus counter spells. Now you might brick, you might hit into a situation where you can't dig further, you've taken a few turns, but you have to actually pass the turn. The cool part about a turn strategy is that you've usually wreaked havoc, especially in this kind of build. Remember, we were playing Submerge, Snuff Out, spells that were free to cast, that destroyed creatures and artifacts and stuff all over the place. So you're hurting your opponents, you're destroying their commanders, so if you pass the turn, there's a chance you might get the turn again, as you've been hurting your opponents and interacting with spot removals. And maybe you've even drawn into some of your counter spells, even though the Force of Will and Mindbreak Trap is not going to work out for you in the Storm fashion, you should still play them in the build. And who knows, maybe you have a Force of Will on top of your library when you actually have to pass turn. Just cast that thing the first moment you get your access to it. There are lots of different ways you could actually change this commander to tweak it further. You could play more artifacts to make the affinity for artifact stronger. You could also play a lot of reduction spells, cards that are basically reducing the casting cost of various instants and sorceries. This is going to help you cast some really expensive spells and dig through your deck that way. So in the end, there's a lot of different ways you can actually tweak this commander depending on how you feel it might need. But also, I believe that Wizards of the Coast are going to print more cards with a high CMC mana cost that have some alternative way of casting it for free. So I definitely think that this commander is a commander that is going to see more upgrades throughout the course of Magic the Gathering's history, as Wizards of the Coast will definitely be printing cards that will be upgrading this commander's storm potential. But for now, I recommend a turn strategy. As always, link in the description below of this video if you want to take a look at my deck list on Moxfield, card by card, exactly how I've put it together. But feel free to change it to whatever kind of style or need you might need. That's it for me this time. Peace